And we're going to have JD Enright is going to join us. He was just there speaking on that panel, but he is going to have an opportunity here in a second to speak with Dr. Will Roper. And big fans of Dr. Will Roper, the work that he did in innovation. And I think it's kind of great that he's probably maybe even be more candid today now that he's in private industry, et cetera, and talk about some of the exciting things that he and his business are doing. But I want to
that has a way of happening, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does have a little freeing. So want to thank JD for being our title sponsor, and want to turn it over to him so that he can have a great conversation with Dr. Will Roper.
Great. Take it away, JD. Great to have you along.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much. What a wonderful day it's been. Fantastic. I've been enjoying the entire day, minus the 5-minute bio break. So I want to welcome do we have Dr. Roper here?
Hello, JD. It's Dave Hamilton again. So we're going to try to get Dr. Roper on here. There may be a little connectivity challenge. We'll deal with that. But if you would like to, it might be good if you guys maybe expand a little bit about some of the things that you thought were interesting today, but not only in the panel that you were just on, but some of the other things and any other messages that you would like to share with our audience around innovation, advanced technologies, the kind of work you're doing. I'd love to give you a couple of minutes to expand on that.
Certainly. Well, I can say for certain America's Future series has proven itself to be quite a valuable event here thus far. I've been stuck at this desk, minus, like I said, the bio break, and I grabbed a little lunch in between.
We can give you another bio break if you need to, sir.
No, I'm good. I was eating lunch as I was like listening and watching, and just tremendously intelligent and well-informed, experienced people on these panels here today. So I'm honored to be a part of it. One of the current underlying themes is everybody really wants to accelerate the ability for startup companies, technology in general, into the national security defense space. And so, I sit on these roundtables and I have conversations and do fireside chats, and there's up until say the last 18 to 24 months, there's just been this feeling that, oh man, it's just getting harder and there's not really a pull coming from those areas. I can tell you, today is indicative of what I've been experiencing in the conversations that I've had over the last 12 to 18 months, we can't go fast enough, and the pull is happening. Here at TMG Core, I'll just use as a personal reference. We have a SIBR, we did we have an AFWERX contract. We're doing a CRADA with the Navy, project with them. And they've been reaching out, the folks over at the North Naval Postgraduate School, Todd Lyons, who heads up their alumni association over there. Phenomenal people over there. And we continue to be invited to all kinds of events. And so for us, it's almost happening too fast, which is contrary to what it would have been, like I said, even 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. So I'm excited that these things are continuing to happen and this pull is continuing to happen.
Well, that's wonderful. We'll turn it over to you and Dr. Roper. I hope you guys have a great time together. We look forward to listening in.
Wonderful. Well, you're on mute there. If you want to unmute, Dr. Roper.
I'm unmuted.
Hey, yes. How are you today?
I am doing great. How about you?
Fantastic. So, Dr. Roper, I'm going to go ahead and do a brief introduction, and to the audience. We have about 332 people on the call right now. So Dr. Roper, for those of you who don't know, is an American physicist and foreign policy strategist who served as the 13th Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, overseeing procurement for the U.S. Air Force and Space Force from 2018 to 2021. Before taking office, he was founder and director of the Strategic Capabilities Office, and prior as Ballistic Missiles Defense System Architect at the Missile Defense Agency. He was also a member of the 2018 National Defense Strategy Steering Group. Dr. Roper earned a Bachelor's of Science in Physics and Mathematics from Georgia Tech in 1998. He returned to Georgia Tech to earn Master's of Physics degree the following year, graduating as a Presidential Scholar summa cum laude in 2002. In 2002, Dr. Roper was selected as a Rhodes Scholar and began study at University College, Oxford for a doctoral program in mathematics with a focus on string theory and quantum mechanics. Dr. Roper's tenure with the Department of Defense has been seen by many as transformative, and he has gained a reputation for aggressive, unconventional, forward-thinking approaches. Dr. Roper is now the CEO of Valency, the leader in autonomous vertical takeoff and landing, or VTOL, delivery drones for medium to heavyweight payloads. That sounds fantastic. So welcome, Dr. Roper. That's quite the entry.
JD, that's an overly kind introduction. All of those steps were accomplished with a lot of help.
I'm sure they were. So a couple of questions. So Valency has had a very successful run over the past few years. What are some of the lessons learned for new and young startups, of which I'm sure there's a number on this call, is trying to complete and win in the national security market?
It's a great question, JD, and hello to everyone. Great to spend time with you today. The first is that just understand it is a challenging system, and no matter how forward-leaning the services with whom you're wanting to work, no matter how forward-leaning the person is that's driving the program that you want to work for, there's so much that's not in their control. And even though technically I oversaw $60 billion of programs for the Air Force and Space Force, there was so much in that oversight that I couldn't control. I couldn't control the budget. I couldn't control when Congress allowed it to be there. I couldn't control continuing resolutions. And so you enter a process where, unlike a company, no one has the absolute authority to make commitments. And it's very frustrating, and it slows it down. So just understand that because it'll help you understand what your counterpart in the government's thinking. But I will say that there's a lot the government can do to make it easier. And I tried with AFWERX to put those things in place so that you could propose ideas to the government and have no idea what they would be used for on the battlefield. You just tell the government what your technology is and how it works. And then the government helps you find your product market fit. So if you've never worked with the military before or the US government, I would recommend starting with AFWERX. Come in through an open topic solicitation, which is that way you can propose something without having to know what it's going to be used for. And AFWERX has a wonderful pipeline to walk you from very small entry-level investments. They're not actually equity owning, but they'll use the term investment. Think of it as non-dilutive cash on your cap table that help you find your customer and then move you up to a more medium-sized investment, which is prototyping to find product market fit. And then there are some of the larger awards called strat-5s, which are enough to actually make it into recurring revenue. And some companies that I helped, like Hermeus, which is building a hypersonic airplane, recently got the largest strat-5 of any company in its short history, with over $60 million in total cash, 30 million of it being non-dilutive from the government. So imagine for a deep tech company, if you can work towards a $60 million award where half of it is non-dilutive, that can be game changing for you and your investors, which is why investors continue to invest alongside AFWERX. The other services are great as well. Other agencies are great, but I don't think they have anything like AFWERX. So I'd recommend starting there. And then as you learn more about the government, you'll know how to go work with other organizations better.
Well, thank you, Dr. Roper. That's really interesting. So you mentioned you were one of the primary, if not the primary, force behind something like AFWERX, which is extremely innovative. What were some of the challenges that you personally found when you were developing something so unique within that space? What were some of the hurdles you need to overcome in the process?
Well, the main one is the bureaucracy. And the second is the side lobes of the bureaucracy. It's big enough in effect that its side lobes mattered. I don't say that jokingly. I had to do a phone call with the AFWERX team at least once a week. We had a standing weekly phone call, and it was about getting blockers out of their way. And most people in government want to do the right thing. They want to be innovative and forward-leaning. It just doesn't take many people in an organization to say no to be the break in the chain. And so you had to find those blockers and get them out of the chain of decision so that things flowed quickly. And that's what leadership will have to do to make change in government happen, is to simply reach down to where things are moving and shaking and see if there's something that is in their way that you can remove at your level. And it had to be done every week, because what AFWERX did threatened rice bowls within the bureaucracy, and those rice bowl owners decided that it was better for them to defend their turf than to change, because the organization needed that to be relevant.
Well, I can say on behalf of other small companies, and in particular TMG Core, I want to thank you for that effort. Being a recipient of an AFWERX Phase 1, thank you. And it was relatively painless. So thank you.
There's no thanks needed. The team did it. All I had to do was invest a weekly phone call with them and get things out of the way. It's because even those forward-leaning people, they just don't have the ability to push something through on their own. So what you can do is keep coming in the front door, but encourage your members of Congress who have tremendous influence over the services. I would get thousands of letters from members of Congress asking about programs and companies. Now, that's another way that you can engage your congressional leadership to put positive pressure on military departments, saying we really like programs like AFWERX, we really like open topics, we should continue these. If they don't hear from you, they won't know it. And members of Congress love to help small businesses. They all want to help. They just don't know how. So be very vocal. It helps.
I agree. I've had some dialogue with Congressman Patrick Fallon out of Texas. I'm meeting with him this weekend for that exact reason. So I would also highly recommend that anyone who's on the call, who's listening and is looking to do something with AFWERX or other types of programs like AFWERX. I understand there's a SpaceWorks now.
Yeah, we created it right before I left, and if they stick with that plan, and it's government, things always change, but it was to have it be a autonomous subsidiary inside of AFWERX, and to have the director of AFWERX alternate back and forth between the Air Force and the Space Force. So the department would have one investment organization, because there's so many technologies that can be used between air and space. So you shouldn't make companies have to figure out which one works. But all of our space professionals who are now guardians, they were so forward-leaning on working with small businesses. They were some of our most aggressive acquisition professionals. So I expect SpaceWorks will be highly successful because of the men and women that I got the privilege to serve with there.
I think they may have created a dual use for dual use. There's whole nother event we can have. Fantastic. So the VTOL and drone market has become very interesting and quite hot. What are the economics of this, Dr. Roper?
It's interesting. I never got to do drone logistics in government, which is why moving from the board, I was on Volanzi's board, and I've taken over as CEO to really help the company go more after military opportunities. And you all know, if you're trying to work with the military, it's hard. And so the experience that I bring will hopefully help in a way that will be positive. What's exciting about VTOL right now is that these airplanes really couldn't be made before. They're really benefiting from the improvement in lithium batteries and electric motors due to a variety of positive influences from other commercial markets that now allow you to build things that take off vertically but then fly linearly, and to build them very cheaply and highly reliably. And this class of drone, the military has had them for decades, but now they can be made commercially and at a fraction of the cost. And so it opens up a lot of interesting markets that are not military missions, like doing medical delivery or doing logistics or doing remote sensing commercially. But then they're also very relevant for military work. And so the tack we're taking in the company would be very similar to how Boeing produces airplanes up at the Everett facility. There's a green-tailed airplane coming off the line, say a 767. If it goes into one facility, it gets turned into a KC-46 tanker, and now it's a U.S. Air Force airplane. If it goes a different route, it becomes a freighter for FedEx. So I think that's a good model for Volanzi, is let's build really great, high quality VTOL drones, and then let's make variants that can be used commercially and militarily. And really bring the fact that a startup can be more agile, that it can be lower in price. It doesn't have to lock into things to be an advantage for us when we're working with military customers.
Well, no, that's I couldn't agree with more. One of the biggest things that I'm dealing with here at TMG Core is the challenges of working with the DoD in particular, right? As a startup company, there's a lot of potential landmines. There's a lot of companies out there that are consulting and will, for an exorbitant fee, they'll step in and hey, we can solve all your problems. And unless you've navigated this before, it can be quite daunting. And there's a lot of mistakes that can be made. I've made them for sure, and will likely continue to make them. What are you seeing as some of the biggest mistakes in your personal experience that startups that you've worked with or have worked near are making when trying to secure work for the DoD?
Well, first, let me say, I wish it wasn't so hard. And I would have loved to have had a few more years on changing the process. And there's a lot that Congress could do if they changed how budgeting worked to work with startups, because you all probably know the budget's made 2 years before you can actually spend it, which is an eternity in startup land. So we need more programs from Congress that work at startup speeds, and that would be my wish if I'm ever able to make it happen. But until that perfect world comes into being, the mistakes that I see startups make is not understanding real opportunity from faults. It's like a government person said, or they read something in a media, or there's like a speech or testimony, and you hear we need blah blah blah. Sometimes those are talking points. Those are ambitions, but they're not tied to the budget. And you learn to recognize those when you've been in government, that the government's ambitions are always greater than what it can afford. But when startups don't know that, they can sometimes feel like they're doing something that's needed by an organization where I could never going to make it into the budget. And the second mistake is closely tied to it, is they don't know who their customer is. And that should be easy to fix, right? I've never felt like asking industry to not just build world-leading technology, but to also have the best ideas about how to win wars with it. It's just stupid, right? The government should know how to use technology to win wars, and hopefully not have to win them, because we deter them with overmatching capabilities. That's why the AFWERX open topics process has been so successful. And there are people who hate that. I got lots of letters from people from all over Washington saying, hey, we want the old solicitations back because it advantages companies that have a lot of government experience. It disadvantages companies that are startups working in the commercial space. The open topic was so important because it's an open, it might say we're interested in like having high power computing, like your capabilities, JD, or let's say it doesn't say that. Let's say it says we're really interested in ISR capabilities, but the open topic then says, and anything else. So you could, for that, say, I have no idea what you want, government, but let me tell you about my computing capability. And then it's the responsibility of the government to say, oh, I could put that on a Reaper or a Predator and I could process at the edge. Oh, I could have more compute that goes in the back of a C-17, so I could do real-time logistics planning. The government should do that. So it exists, but again, I definitely recommend, being really engaging your members of Congress to say, we need more of this. We need more things that are open. We need more support financially. We need more flexibility with the budget. And if you look at what AFWERX has been able to achieve, I think it's been pretty remarkable in 3 years. They were averaging 4-to-1 private matching from VC dollars into government dollars. And not every company is going to work in VC, but for those that have never had a way to work with the government, seeing like you put $1 in, and you see 5 times it return in purchasing power, that's good business. It's not just good for those companies, it's good business for the government.
Yeah, I agree completely. A perfect example of this, real-time example. It was back when Trump was in office, and there was a presidential decree signed about wanting to upgrade the entire electrical grid for the United States. And I had engineers and scientists running into my office the next morning going, "We're going to kill it. We could do this on the edge. We could put computing and make smart grids and all and all those things." And I, having had some experience there, said, "Okay, let's pace this a little bit. This is exciting, and it needs to be funded, and then there needs to be a process, and how fast, all of the pacing that goes along with that. Had we decided to put a whole bunch of time and money and effort into developing a specific thing for that specific ideal, then we would have been a bit in trouble, as far as our capital spend." So your point is well taken, and it's right on the mark there. So that's an example of how, that kind of thing where you see something announced, whether it's a congressional thing or it's one of our leaders on the Hill making comments, really dig down and make sure that it's a real thing. It's something that you can actually participate in, and then you have a conduit to get to that next step. And that's from the next question I have here, is that the single biggest and best entry point or starting point for new startups looking for securing work with the DoD. So what's, in your opinion, has been the best, and you may say AFWorks, I don't know, but what's the best entry point or starting point for new startups looking to secure work with the DoD?
I really, no matter how it's being done, I think open topics are the best way to come in. If you don't know, if you haven't been in the process before, a phase 1 can make sense because it's not going to be a huge award, but it gets you a government contracting officer, a program manager who's probably leading a cohort of companies that are all in a similar category. And it provides you someone with a government email that you can talk to about finding the right customer for your technology. And then it's really when you move to a phase 2 SBIRS award that you're really now working with the customer, you're prototyping, you're developing that product market fit. You won't do that with the lower ones. That's where you can start having private investment matching, which we used in the Air Force as a show of commercialization potential. So it wasn't, we didn't look at the total amount of funding that you had, but we looked at, if you said you were a commercial company and you were able to raise VC capital from firms that had good bona fides, that was a good housekeeping seal of approval for the Air Force. We think our awards ended up becoming the good housekeeping seal of approval for Silicon Valley and other investment locations. So that's the way I would come in. I think I'm biased, obviously. I think AFWorks is the best. I will say, now that I'm on the other side of my process, transitions are tough, and those weekly phone calls, I'm not there to do them anymore. So if you are the benefit of what AFWorks has done and that amazing team, I think it's going to have to be a fight to keep them operating with the same freedom that they've had. Because it does challenge the system. So if you're benefiting from what they are doing, don't presume it's a given, they'll always be there. Washington's always a fight. Things rise and fall. Things that are disruptive tend to be crushed unless there is someone giving them top cover.
No, yep, I agree. We've got to support that. And again, it goes back to continue to talk to your congressman. We have a few minutes left. I've got a few questions from the attendees here. One question from Ed Hennessy. How important is alignment with defense contractors? And in parentheses, he has, with their groups that focus on unmanned vehicles, close parentheses, to your overall game plan?
It really depends on what you're doing. And No defense prime has really cracked the code of working with startups. They often can crush them. They want to, but they, as big organizations, they naturally mirror the bureaucracy of the government. It really depends on, is your technology one that would be added to one of their systems? And if the answer is yes, they could be part of your quote government ecosystem. They're just an extension of it as companies that work exclusively with the government. They haven't cracked the code yet, and I'm helping companies, large defense companies, think about how to work with startups in a way that doesn't crush them. So I would try to understand their interest, but also understand that they will mirror the government, even though they should have the flexibility as a private company that the government can't have.
Yeah, fair enough. So another question here from the attendees, from Alex Altamar. Question for Will. What fuels your seemingly perpetual optimism?
Technology. I mean, it always makes you hopeful, right? Technology, you either see the hopeful future or you see the scary, the dystopian one. And I choose a hopeful future. I think that's important when you're trying to do innovation and entrepreneurship, is you've got to be positive and you've got to see the best in things. And it's funny how much people will mirror that. And one of the rules that I had in the Air Force, and I was not always perfect in obeying it. Yes, I have bad days. There would be days I would want to rage quit and be like, I don't want to do this bureaucracy anymore. So yes, no one is perpetually optimistic. But a general rule for me was that I did not want to hear about the past. And it sounds like, well, yeah, I would say we're not historians, we're futurists. I would allow it if I had to understand something about the past to make a decision. But I found that by letting people, when I wanted to change something, it would invite this conversation where they would go back and they would tell me all the times this had been tried and it didn't work. And the whole discussion became of the future, a negative discussion. It became a discussion about the past, a negative discussion about the past. When you talk about the future, it can be as positive as you want it to be. And I found by focusing on the future and staying positive about it, you could make it happen. So you're either going to live in your future or in someone else's. And I always wanted to choose to live in mine.
Amen to that. As a serial entrepreneur and currently in it, one thing that I've learned over the years, and my staff will attest to, is that you can never give up. And you've always got to be optimistic. You've always got to think about the future. You fail fast and you move on. And that's the message to anyone here on the call who's in that space right now, in the startup mode. Don't ever give up. It's okay to fail, move fast. As Dr. Roper said, you're going to get frustrated some days, walk out the door, kick it, and then come back in and think about the future. One of the interesting things I found, and then we'll wrap up here, is that I've hired folks to work around me who may not have any experience in a particular, very smart, educated people, experienced people, but maybe not in that particular space. And so they don't bring any preconceived notions for that, to your point earlier. So it allows them to look at things with rose-colored glasses. So I'll leave it at that. Dr. Roper, thank you so much for your participation in today. And I'll turn it back over to the team.
Thank you, JD. Great spending time with you and with everyone. Best of luck.
Yeah, and we thank you as well, JD. Well done. And Dr. Roper, thank you so much for taking the time today. You were just great. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Really, no, you were just wonderful. Thanks for being a part of the team.
So
Pretty good stuff, huh?
Well, yeah, Dr. Roper's great. I mean, yeah, I don't know if you guys know this. He's a string theorist, so he can handle a lot of the simpler stuff.
Anything. Yeah, he sure can.
Yeah, you have a great day, sir.